Hunter x Hunter is a shōnen manga that began serialization back in 1998, written and illustrated by Yoshihiro Togashi, who at this time would best be known as the author of Yu Yu Hakusho. It's also received 2 anime adaptations in 1999 and 2011 respectively. The story follows protagonist Gon Freaks on his quest to become a hunter and reunite with his world-renowned hunter and world-renowned deadbeat father, and whatever misadventures he and his friends get to while in the process of doing that. Spanning from punching pedophile clowns and hostage situations with terrorists to MMO deck building and stopping a world threat mutant ant uprising. Hunter x Hunter is often praised for its large, constantly developing cast of characters and its ever-expanding, beautifully crafted world. The spiraling, unpredictable nature of the story and its wonderfully designed magic system give way for meticulously tactical action, as well as resonant emotional consequences. There's a lot of Hunter x Hunter and a lot to love about it, but perhaps the single most criticized part of the story would be the beginning, with claims that it's way too slow and nothing really happens in it. And I disagree with this assessment completely. Sure, it might be a bit quaint and narrow in scope compared to the heights the series reaches by the end, but it does a wonderful job of pulling you into the world, introducing characters and their relationships and setting up story arcs to unfold much later. And that's what I want to focus on in this video. More specifically, what spans the first volume of the manga, or the first 4 episodes of the 2011 anime adaptation. We open up on Gon fishing, just waiting for a fish to bite. It's very normal to open up a story on your main character doing something mundane, something they've probably done before multiple times. It very quickly helps you get a grasp on what kind of character they are. And you can infer a lot on Gon's character just from the choice of opening on him fishing alone. He's got sharp focus, and he's clearly in tune with nature. I mean, animals are surrounding him, and he has a giant leaf head that serves as camouflage of some kind. He's clearly hardcore about this whole thing, in a very stoic kind of way. The fish nibbles. He tenses up. And then... you get this sharp contrast from his quiet, focused demeanor to just an explosion of energy. He's jumping, screaming, and smiling. He leaps off the tree to wrap the line around the trunk. Forget being one with nature, he's just another beast. Gon's characterization is immediately really strong and effective. The conflict during the first half of this episode is Gon's aunt and caretaker Mito doesn't approve of Gon's decision to become a hunter and take after his father Jin. He forgave raising his son to pursue that goal after all. But it's exactly Gon's inquisitive nature that prompts him to find out just what was it about being a hunter that was so important to his father. Still, feeling this way about your seemingly deadbeat father you've never met is definitely not the standard, so to fill in the gaps we get this little flashback to when Gon first found out about Jin. A hunter named Kair meets a younger Gon who's gotten himself in danger wandering the woods, and is forced to kill this big fluffy guy to keep him safe, after which he reprimands him for being so careless. Turns out Kair is Jin's pupil, who's actually looking for him himself, so Gon prompts him on his father a fair bit and they have a chat about being a hunter. I really like this scene. Clearly his brief interaction with Kair made a big impact on him if he's willing to uproot his entire life as a child to follow this dream. But nothing is directly stated. You're left to infer just how much this one moment means to Gon based on who he is as a character at the time the story picks up. Of course, aided by the evocative paneling and the decision to show he's still holding onto Kair's hunter card he dropped back then. It doesn't seem like much, but I bet you can easily picture a wars manga having the main character spout a big monologue about how big of a change this one moment made in their life. Instead, you just get this pensive hangout with his little bear friend as he says goodbye. Good stuff. You've noticed I've been showing footage from the 1999 adaptation and the manga for this bit, and that's cause this scene was sadly altogether cut from the 2011 adaptation, which totally misses the impact when Kair reappears way later on in the story. In a TV interview, director Hiroshi Kōjina mentions they were afraid viewers might forget him by the time he was reintroduced, so they made the decision to present a truncated version of the flashback on his reintroduction later on, which I guess is an understandable enough choice. In another interview with the German publication 10 years later, he further explains there were multiple complications with inserting Kair in the story, though ultimately he regrets the way it turned out. Overall, though a bit of a shame, I think they did a fine enough job backfilling these issues later on in the show's run, so it's not that big of a deal. To give some props to the 2011 adaptation though, the scene where Gon and Aunt Mito part ways has gotta be one of the most hopelessly adorable moments in cinema. Gon boards a ship on its way to the Hunter exam, and it's here we're introduced to Leorio and Kurapika, who are immediately recognizable as main characters. Kurapika is this cool and collected, sententious personality, while Leorio is a laid-back, hot-tempered simpleton, so they instantly clash. Little aside, but the visual language on these designs is like really sick. Look at this lanky-ass normal-ass dude with tiny glasses, isn't he adorable? For years now, I keep hearing people go on about how Togashi is a bad artist, which is demonstrably false if you're not a coward. But he's for sure an amazing character designer. Even in Yu Yu Hakusho, you can tell he honed the craft of drawing the world's cuntiest teenage boys. Like, look at Yusuke's drip. No doubt he married Sailor Moon author Naoko Takeuchi, an expert at drawing slaying girls. I like to imagine their marital arrangement is exclusively for the purpose of creating a world-ruling monopoly on 90s fueled fire designs across the gender spectrum. Don't community note me, this is real. Back to the story. At some point it becomes clear the captain is a hunter examineer, and the boat ride is essentially a screening test to weed out the contestants. The gang is prompted to share their motivations for becoming hunters. Kurapika wants revenge on the Phantom Troop, a criminal organization that killed his entire clan, while Leorio claims to be in it just for the money and wealth opportunity. This further escalates confrontations between the two, and so they take it outside Waffle House. It's at this point the storm outside gets real bad, and as they're having their little showdown, a crewmate gets tossed overboard, which prompts them both to drop everything to try to catch him. And in an act of perfect visual storytelling, Gon leaps past them to grab him, counting on Leorio and Kurapika to pull him back in, which they of course do. After which, they have no choice but to put aside their differences and apologize like mature people. It's cute shit. And of course, they all pass the screening test. Upon landing, the captain gives them a hot tip on a shortcut to the exam site, though it seems to lead to a forest in the opposite direction of the actual location, so Leorio decides to go his own way with the quick route, until he overhears that it's a trap and thinks better of it. I love this bit because it's played out as a joke, like, we wouldn't split the party off that early, that's ridiculous. But it's not just a bluff, the story is completely unafraid to have the main cast go their own way to pursue their own goals, splitting them up for arcs at a time. And I really appreciate this aspect of the show. It gives the characters a lot of dimensionality and independence, they aren't just there to serve the main story. And it offers plenty of opportunity to develop the characters off screen if needed or create drama with their absence. On the way to the exam site, there's a couple more tests to help further characterize the trio. There's this silly little quiz where they have to answer who they would save in a dangerous situation, A, their daughter, or B, their son, with the only applicable answers being A or B. The implication being that the correct answer is to not answer at all. Kurapika is smart enough to be able to see through the logical trick. Leorio doesn't, but refuses to answer altogether because he's just that pissed at the question, which is hilarious. And Gon doesn't answer at all because he's lost in thought about it. He took the question so earnestly and literally that he imagined himself in a similar situation and the choices he would make, which gives everyone pause for thought and of course signals to the viewer, hey, these characters might have to make similarly tough choices in the future, which is of course followed up on. In any case, they all three get to pass in their own little way. Coming up on the forest, the gang spots these signs for magical beasts, and I guess it's a good time to talk about world building. The world building in Hunter x Hunter is what I guess you would call naturalistic. No one ever sits you down as an audience member and explains the structure of the world or unrelated things to you. Everything's simply brought up and explained as it becomes relevant. And since our protagonist is a kid that has never left his tiny incommunicated island, there's always someone to explain things to you when necessary. This approach is useful for things like pacing and it helps mitigate info dumps, especially at the beginning of the story. It is also way easier to work with in serialized fiction, since establishing too much at the start can be overly constrictive to write around, and makes dropped elements or plotlines all the worse for it. More specifically, it works really well in Hunter x Hunter because the ever-expanding world through Gon's eyes is made a point of focus, and is made engaging through Gon's curious personality. And so you learn right now that magical beasts are a thing, and the one they're about to encounter, the Kiriko, can speak and shapeshift. By the time they get to the cabin, one's already hurt a man and taken a woman hostage. Leorio stays behind to help the injured man, while Gon and Pika chase after the Kiriko. It's a good time to show off Gon's animalistic physicality as he leaps from tree to tree. They catch up and safeguard the girl. As Gon continues the chase, Leorio shows up to help Kurapika, but he punks him for relinquishing his duty to help the wounded man, which shows for all their disagreements he counted on Leorio to keep his word on that. Which he did, cause turns out that's another Kiriko and it chases after Gon. Gon himself is able to notice he's fighting two different magical beasts at once, cause he can somehow tell them apart from their voices and faces. And sure thing, all these four are a family serving as navigators for the Hunter exam, and this was all another test. Gon and Kurapika figure out their identity with their perception and knowledge skills respectively. But while Leorio was none the wiser, they still pass him cause he did a good job with the medical care, which is sweet. So far, Leorio's been undermined and sort of dragging down the team, so it's great to get a moment where we can celebrate his particular skills. And so, with renewed confidence in each other, the Kiriko agree to fly them directly to the exam site. Wait, these guys can fly? Once they make it to the exam site proper, we get the time-honored group shot of all the aspiring hunters who'll be around, where you can instantly tell who's important based on how much their design stands out. Look, that guy's funny looking. Look, that guy's a ninja. That's kinda cool. Hey, that guy just cut some other guy's arms off. That's not cool. I mean, it is kinda cool, but like, not cool, dude. I guess he's our first antagonist. Hey, that kid with the white hair looks like our last main character. The exam starts and the first proper test is Ranting. White-haired kid who's cool enough not only to have white hair but to also have a skateboard notices a kid his age and is like, friendship! After 3 hours of straight running, Leorio is beginning to fall behind as he becomes physically and mentally exhausted. He's about ready to give in when Gon stops for him and he just looks at him. It might sound silly, but this is really good storytelling. We can glean a lot from this little interaction. Back on the ship in episode 1, Gon refused to get involved in Kurapika's and Leorio's arguments since he figured it was up to them to settle their dispute. Similarly, in this situation, he just leaves it up to him. He can't tell Leorio what to do or why he should do it. He just shows this sudden determination and faith in his friend to keep going. For whatever reasons Leorio should find within himself to do so. And in Leorio's case, they're pretty simple. It's a really uncomplicated scene, but there's a strength in that. You can once again imagine a worse version of this moment where Gon starts yelling at Leorio to get back up and give it his all. After all, he's come so far and he's so close to becoming a hunter, which he so desperately wants or whatever. And the best part of the scene is that one arc later, Leorio gets a moment to show this quiet resolve back to his friend. Which is just such a rewarding way to show the audience that these characters are gaining respect for each other and growing closer. And something maybe even better about this scene is that Killua is right there observing it all. He's getting to know and understand Gon as a person and developing an appreciation for him through how he treats his friends. Which, as you find out later in the show, is quite important for him. Such thoughtful and considerate character writing makes even simple scenes like this layered and deeply powerful. Friendship! Leorio catches up to Kurapika and they get a chance to converse together, while Gon and Killua do the same. The question at the heart of both conversations is the guys' respective reasons for wanting to be hunters. Hey, that's the title of the chapter, cool! An important aspect is how both conversations are juxtaposed and contrast against each other. Gon and Killua, being kids, are able to instantly open up and speak freely. Killua finds Gon's whole deal weird, but perhaps even weirder is that he doesn't want to be a hunter at all. He's just here cause he's bored and he thought the exam would be hard and fun. And while he's not lying at all, it's instantly obvious there's something up with Killua, but listen, there's gotta be something to build intrigue around, right? It's nice at this point to give you something to look forward to learning more about. Kurapika himself is trying to probe further into Leorio's motivations. At this point, he's learned enough about him that he doesn't believe he's vain enough to just want riches. Leorio refuses to explain further as Pika keeps pushing him. It's this back and forth where you can tell Kurapika really wants an answer out of him but is trying his best to not be brusque about it. Whereas Leorio really doesn't want to give it to him but is attempting to not dismiss him outright so to not start another fight. They're aware now they're likely to quarrel in this situation but are making concerted efforts to avoid that. Them being more mature than the other two boys comes with more nuanced social interactions but endearing all the same. Friendship! Kurapika is getting nowhere quickly, so he further opens up about his clan. They were targeted for their scarlet red eyes, which are seen as commodities in black markets. Kurapika's ultimate goal as a hunter is to infiltrate said circles to recover them. This makes Leorio feel further inadequate about his motives, and at this point he blows up on him. Leorio's relationship with money traces back to his childhood, when he lost a close friend to a curable illness they could not afford the surgery for. As he worked towards becoming a doctor to save people like them, he was further stumped by how much capital he would need to even begin paying for his education, let alone the medicine and tools to offer his aid free of charge. And so he enrolled for the hunter exam. In a fantasy setting where already the stakes are growing disproportionately, it's easy to disregard Leorio's goal as selfish greed like Kurapika did, when in reality it ends up being a noble yet mundane one. There's a really impressive balance of the grounded and the fantastical across Hunter x Hunter, in a way where everything just sorta comes together and simply makes sense, you don't really question it. I think that dichotomy is why this manages to work so well, and Leorio becomes probably the single most engaging character to root for. He might just be a guy, but he's our guy. And with that, we have introduced and set up the main cast and the relationships. Now the story can focus on putting them in interesting situations and developing the characters further. I think the start of Hunter x Hunter showcases how Togashi has a very strong grasp on storytelling fundamentals, which he would go on to sharpen and build from throughout the rest of it, to the point of accomplishing truly incredible things. But he never would have gotten the chance to tell those stories if he didn't captivate people from the very start. I'd love to go over some of those stories, but that's well outside the scope of this video and we gotta stop at some point, so maybe some other time. That being said, I'm actually not sure how to end the video, so Yeah, that's my name. Wait, did I film myself in the shower? That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that question. That's a great question. I'm so happy you asked that. Thanks for mentioning that. Well, actually, there's this Hunter x Hunter fighting game coming out soon, developed by Aiding. They made Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and all these other fighting games, and that looks pretty good. It got me pretty excited, and I guess Togashi is posting on Twitter like every other day, you know, random drawings saying his new chapter manuscripts and stuff like that, so that got me thinking about this series. Yeah. Why am I speaking as if I'm being interviewed when I'm just talking to myself? Fuck you.